The flex ties bit into her wrists. Not enough to cut, but enough to mark. Enough to leave a ring. 16-year-old Kay felt every passenger's eyes on her as she was moved to the front row of the plane, hands bound before her. The flight attendant with the tight French twist stood guard, arms crossed, jaw set. She was the type of woman who believed her vigilance made the world safer. But who was protecting the girl? Nobody knew who Kay really was. Not yet. They saw only what they wanted to see, a threat. A problem. A black teenager traveling alone who didn't answer questions the way they wanted. In 40 minutes, those same flight attendants would be trembling. The captain would be making frantic calls. The airline executives would be drafting emergency statements. Because Kay wasn't just any teenager. And what happened next wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about lawsuits or settlements or viral outrage. It was about something far more powerful, systemic change. Have you ever been judged based solely on your appearance? Have you watched someone's entire perception of you transform once they learned your name or status? This story exposes the raw truth about how quickly assumptions are made, and how those with power can choose to respond when wronged. If you're new here, this channel shares real stories of racism and injustice, but also stories of accountability and transformation. Hit subscribe now if you believe in both exposing hard truths and creating meaningful change. This isn't just another outrage story, it's about what happens when someone has the courage to demand better. Let me take you back to where it began. Not with the handcuffs, not with the confrontation, but with a pair of expensive, scuffed sneakers and a flight attendant who couldn't help but notice them. The first thing the flight attendant noticed was the shoes. They were expensive, low-cut white sneakers with a gold-trimmed logo that only appeared in boutique stores in Soho and at Hollywood premieres. But they were scuffed across the front, not from the clumsy sort of scuffle you'd expect from a young teen, or even a jet-setter who didn't care. They were scuffed like they'd been run through city streets, like someone who didn't need to walk anywhere had chosen to anyway. The second thing the flight attendant noticed was the girl's eyes. Dark, steady, suspended between wary and brave like a tightrope walker. She moved down the aisle late. Boarding group had already been called and seated. The gate agent had paused when he scanned her pass, eyebrows narrowing a fraction before plastering on a smile. The girl had felt that look. She felt them all. The subtle watches. The ones that pretended not to be watches at all. What the flight attendant didn't notice, couldn't have known, was that this seemingly ordinary teenager had been on the cover of Forbes. That her mother's company was worth billions. That the bracelet on her wrist, the one with the custom engraving, was a symbol of a foundation that had changed thousands of lives. All the flight attendant saw was a young black girl traveling alone. And in her mind, that required investigation. Have you ever felt someone watching you, making assumptions before you said a word? Drop a comment below if you've experienced that feeling of being prejudged. This story might hit close to home for many of you. Kay found her seat near the front, the upgraded section that wasn't quite first class but had legroom. The man seated beside her wore a navy blazer and carried himself with the unremarkable confidence of someone who'd never wondered if an armrest belonged to him. He smiled automatically, then registered the girl's age, 16, maybe 17, and the smooth plait of her hair pulled into a low ponytail, the simple black sweats, the clean notebook tucked under one arm. Traveling alone? He asked, voice friendly, like he was doing her a favor by noticing. Yes, she said. To Denver. He nodded, approving, and offered his hand. Philip Turner. Business? Well, obviously. I guess everyone headed there is business. She shook his hand because it seemed like it would cause a scene if she didn't. I go by Kay. Kay as in the letter? That's cool. He turned and started fiddling with his phone, then glanced curiously. What's Kay short for? She didn't answer. She didn't know him. Kay had learned early that her name carried weight. That once people knew it, they treated her differently. She'd seen it happen with her mother, how a room changed when Elise Daly walked in. How men in suits straightened their backs. How women with clipboards suddenly found their voices. Kay didn't want that. Not today. Today she just wanted to be a teenager flying to Denver. Overhead, the announcements repeated with the mechanical warmth of a perpetual holiday. Good afternoon, folks. We're closing out boarding for Flight 318 to Denver. Please stow your bags, turn your phones to airplane mode, and prepare for an on-time departure. The aisle lights dimmed. The plane hummed. The attendant, her name badge glittered, Alyssa, bent to check seat belts. She paused at Kay's row. Hi there, sweetie, Alyssa said, softening her face as if it were a candle. Can I see your boarding pass? Kay passed over her phone. Alyssa eyed it, then looked at Kay, then the man in the blazer. You're traveling alone? Yes, Kay said. Is there a problem? The attendant's smile held its form for a practiced beat. Unaccompanied minors sometimes sit closer to the galley. I just want to make sure you're comfortable. I'm comfortable, Kay said. Alyssa hesitated. Her gaze snagged on a small gold bracelet Kay wore. Sleek, a custom, almost old-fashioned piece engraved with a symbol rather than a name. Alyssa's eyes moved on, but when she took the phone back to double-confirm the reservation, her eyebrows creased, then smoothed again. She handed it back. Okay. If you need anything, let us know. The plane pushed back from the gate. Kay looked out the window. Somewhere beyond the tarmac, Atlanta burned slow under the gristle of late summer, the kind of heat that made the air itself look like it was reconsidering its life choices. Down there, Kay's mother would be in a meeting. She wondered if it had started yet. If the firm's partners were already asking the questions. If her mother's mouth had drawn down at the edges the way it did when someone underestimated her. Kay wasn't sure when she'd started clenching her jaw through takeoff. It had never scared her when she was little. Back then, every ascent felt like a miracle. Now, it felt like a bet you made with the sky, and every hand was house advantage. At 10,000 feet, the Wi-Fi popped alive. Screens lit. The passengers around Kay took to their devices like they'd been waiting all day for permission to exist again. Philip leaned into her space without quite entering it. You a student? Summer program? I run a mentorship, he said. Black youth. You know, I really believe in investing early. Kay looked at him. She'd met his type 100 times. They held their assumptions like a compliment. They summoned their allyship like they were ordering off a menu. They asked the safest possible questions and expected standing ovations for it. Just visiting family, she said. Nice, he said. Where you from originally? She turned slightly so her ponytail brushed the window. Here. Oh, Atlanta, he said. Great city. Good food. He smiled. Shame about, you know. Kay waited. The crime, he added quickly. Just what you hear. Aha. He glanced down and then, in a move so subtle Kay sometimes thought she was making it up, he tipped the corner of his phone to sneak a photo. She watched the reflection in the dark glass of the window. Her stomach tightened. She looked back at him slow enough that he could withdraw if he wanted to pretend. You didn't? How many of you have experienced these kinds of microaggressions? The assumptions, the backhanded compliments, the subtle violations of privacy? Comment below if you've had similar encounters. I read every comment. Kay had grown up with these interactions. The security guards who followed her in stores. The teachers who expressed surprise at her test scores. The college recruiters who assumed she was there for athletics rather than academics. Each time, her mother had taught her the same lesson. Your reaction is your power. Choose it wisely. But sometimes, even the most prepared person reaches a breaking point. If you're still with me, type, I'm here in the comments. I want to know who's following this journey. Alyssa returned with a tray of waters and snack mix. Can I get you? The plane jolted suddenly. Barely anything, just a bump of air like a shoulder in a hallway. But it sent the cups clinking. Alyssa steadied herself on the seat back. Sorry? Little patch of chop. Kay flinched, then exhaled. Across the aisle, a boy in a neon hoodie laughed breathlessly. I love turbulence, he said to his sister. Feels like Six Flags. Kay closed her eyes. She counted to 5. When she opened them, Alyssa was still there, gaze flicking again to Kay's bracelet. That's a beautiful piece, she said. Where'd you get it? It was a gift. Oh, nice. From your parents? It sounded like an accusation feathered in sugar. From my mother, Kay said, letting the word find its own weight in the air. Well, that's lovely, Alyssa replied, but something in her face said she wasn't done. She moved up the aisle, then came back with another attendant. This one older, with a tight French twist and a name tag that read M. Weathers. Ms. Weathers leaned in slightly. Ma'am, can we see your ID? Kay stared. Why? A routine identity verification, Weathers said. We've had instances of seat confusion and minors in exit rows. It's nothing to worry about. I'm not in an exit row. Just your ID, Weathers repeated gently. Kay felt the muscle jump in her jaw. The plane hummed around them. She could feel eyes in the adjacent rows turn curious. She reached into her small crossbody bag and pulled out a slim card case. I'm 16, she said. I don't have a driver's license. I have a school ID and a passport card. That will do. Kay passed the passport card over. Weathers took it to the galley, conferring with Alyssa in low tones. When they returned, their smiles had stiffened. Ma'am, Weathers said, we're having a little trouble confirming your information. It's a passport card, Kay said. Not a full passport. They don't have barcodes. Right, Weathers said. We're just going to hold on to it for a moment while we verify with the ground. No, Kay said. The word came out even, layered with a calm she did not feel. You're not holding my identification. Weathers' smile lost all pretense. I'm afraid we have to insist. On what grounds? Kay asked. Weathers tilted her head. On the grounds of safety. There was a moment then, a tightening in the cabin. Safety. Kay tasted the word, metallic. She looked around. The man beside her was doing that thing again, eyes neutral, hands still, as if his very stillness absolved him of participation. 2 rows back, a woman in a floral blouse was whispering to her husband. Across the aisle, someone had already pushed their call button. Kay spoke carefully. I'd like to know why you're verifying my identity when you didn't verify his, she said, tipping her head toward Philip. Weathers opened her mouth, closed it, looked at Alyssa. Ma'am, Weathers tried again, we can continue this in the galley and out of the aisle. I'm fine here, Kay said. She could feel her pulse in her fingers. She could feel that old weight in her chest, the one she'd carried since she was 8, and the security guard at the Buckhead store had followed her for 3 aisles, then put a hand on her shoulder when she'd reached for the shampoo. Weathers' voice chilled a degree. If you refuse to comply with crew instructions, we'll have to alert the captain. Kay didn't move. She didn't blink. Somewhere beneath her, the engines sang their endless note. She could have reached for her phone. She could have called her mother. She did neither. She looked at Weathers and said, do what you need to do. Weathers nodded. Alyssa, please notify the flight deck. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew you were being treated unfairly, but speaking up might make things worse? What did you do? The decision Kay faced in this moment is one many people confront daily: comply to avoid escalation or stand firm on principle. The minutes gathered miserly. The plane hit another seam of air and rolled gently, a cradle rocked by an inattentive nurse. When Alyssa returned, she had a small, gray plastic case in her hand. Kay's stomach dropped, but she'd known, hadn't she? She'd known from the moment the gate agent had smiled a fraction too hard. Ma'am, Alyssa said, for the safety of the flight, the captain has requested that you be restrained until we land. Philip flinched. He turned. Whoa, is that really? She's just a kid. Weathers' eyes flashed. Sir, please stay out of this. Kay felt her voice leave her and return, like a boomerang that took the long way home. You're going to handcuff me on a plane. We don't use cuffs, Weathers lied, and then opened the case to reveal a set of flex ties, a nicer version of the ones cops used at protests with padded edges. Alyssa shifted her weight. If you comply, we'll make this as comfortable as possible. The phrase fractured inside Kay. She thought of the 4th of July, the fireworks threading over Piedmont Park like stitches in a wound. She thought of her mother's face when Kay had told her she preferred to fly alone, that it was easier not to be recognized as a pair. Her mother had not argued, and that had hurt more than any lecture would have. Kay turned her palms up, wrists together, offering something that should never be asked. She kept her eyes on the window so their faces would stay blurred when they leaned in. The zip of the tie caught the cabin's murmur. It was quiet and bright and devastating. They tightened, not too tight but enough. Enough to mark. Enough to leave a ring. We're going to seat you in the front row for the remainder of the flight, Weathers said. It's standard procedure. If you've made it this far in the video, you're witnessing something that happens more often than most people realize. Hit like right now if you're still with me and comment justice if you believe accountability matters. Kay rose when they told her to. Someone gasped. She didn't look to see who. She didn't stumble. It would have given them too much. She walked ahead of Alyssa, who offered the courtesy of flattening her hand, not holding Kay's elbow the way the other one, the way Weathers, clearly wanted. They settled Kay in the bulkhead seat, belt across her lap, zip ties visible. Alyssa tucked a blanket over Kay's knees and pretended not to be covering them. We'll be landing in about an hour, Alyssa murmured. Would you like some water? Yes, Kay said. Alyssa brought it in a paper cup with a lid and a straw like Kay was 6. Kay drank because her throat hurt. Around her, the cabin performed its elaborate pantomime of normal. The beverage cart rattled and clinked. Someone laughed at a movie. A baby cried and then hiccuped itself to sleep. Beside her in the aisle, Weathers kept watch, arms crossed, jaw set. She was the sort of woman who once believed her vigilance made the world safer. Kay saw that. She had a talent for seeing. The Wi-Fi pinged with a new flurry. Kay's phone buzzed on the tray table where they'd placed it, as if proximity could soothe. She couldn't reach it, but the screen lit intermittently with notifications. She recognized the icons. a messaging app her mother hated but which her friends used, news alerts, a calendar ding. One banner slid up and caught on a name she did not use in public. The name thudded through the cabin like a dropped coin. Alyssa saw it. Her face changed. Not much. Not dramatically enough to be a movie, but enough for anyone who was looking. She wasn't the only one. 3 rows back, a young man in a gray hoodie, he had baseball catcher's hands and a tattoo that peeked from his sleeve, squinted. He swiped his own phone, head tipping as if comparing. The woman in the floral blouse had already stopped pretending to read her book. She was scrolling, searching, and making a small, involuntary noise when she found something she recognized. Kay felt it arrive before she knew what it was. Like a pressure change in the cabin. Like descending through a storm. The first ping came from someone in row 12, who didn't bother to be discreet. Wait, is this? Oh my God, is that her? That's her, right? Weathers stiffened. Phones on airplane mode, please, she snapped, the reflexive warning of someone who'd lost control of the narrative. It's her, the woman in the floral blouse whispered, awed and a little afraid. It's her. Philip stood halfway from his seat to see better and then sat and then stood again, undecided. His face had gone pale, like someone who'd realized he'd been casually chatting with a thundercloud. Kay stared at the seat back in front of her. She could feel her own name humming like electricity across a wire. Not the initial she gave people. The one that had been printed on the cover of Forbes Teen last winter in a font that made her wince. The one that had followed her every day of sophomore year in a dozen different mispronunciations. The one that her mother said at twilight after hard meetings, like a prayer or a promise. Kenese. The phone on the tray lit again. One of the notifications this time was not from a friend. It was from an app her mother's company used, one she rarely saw. She'd never installed it, the firm had done that. It flashed once, then again, then vanished as if retracting itself before anyone else could see. We all know what it's like to be judged by appearances. But how many of us have experienced being treated as a threat simply because of our skin color? If you're watching this from a place where you felt this kind of discrimination, know that you're not alone. We see you. We hear you. And your stories matter. Alyssa leaned in, voice small. Miss Kenese, she said, tasting the name like something she hadn't earned the right to say. Her eyes darted to Weathers. Do you want me to, would you like me to call someone? Weathers' mouth pinched. Alyssa, she warned. Alyssa straightened. Just asking if she wants water. But her face was flushed. Row 12 had fully engaged. A boy was screaming to his girlfriend. She's the coding girl. The one who built the app for food banks. And the equity fund thing. Didn't she keynote at, what was it? South by Southwest EDU, someone else supplied smugly. She's like 16. 17, said a third voice, helpful. She turned 17 on Juneteenth. There was a feature. Black billionaire teen, the boy breathed, tasting the phrase with adolescent awe. And they. His sentence ended in a sound that wasn't a word. Kay didn't turn. She didn't say anything. The flex ties bit delicately into the soft skin of her wrists each time the plane shifted. She focused on breathing in counts. She heard feet. She heard Weathers inhale to deliver a rebuke and then stop mid-breath as the cabin door's small phone rang. She lifted it. Listen. Then, when she hung up, she looked as if someone had placed a lit match under her tongue. Miss Kenese, she said. We need to speak, please. Kay turned her head. I'm restrained, she said evenly. Weathers flinched a fraction. I will remove the ties if you agree to remain seated. Kay nodded once. Weathers produced a small pair of rounded shears from the plastic kit. She snipped. The sound was too loud for what it was. The zip loosened. The ring-shaped memory remained. If you're still watching, you're about to see how power shifts when identity is revealed. But I want you to ask yourself, should it take status or wealth for someone to be treated with basic dignity? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Weathers cleared her throat. Miss Kenese, Ms. Daly, she amended, the name landing in the aisle with the weight of an apology. Our captain received a message from the ground. And from, she swallowed. From the Daily group. She couldn't help it, she glanced at the bracelet again. Kay didn't rescue her. She didn't provide easy route maps out of the wrong turn they'd taken. She waited. Weathers continued, and the next words came out brittle like glass. We were informed that you are protected under specific security protocols due to your public profile. We were also informed that you prefer to travel anonymously, which we should have honored. You chose not to, Kay said. Her voice was quiet. The quiet of a room after lightning. Weather's posture struggled between defensiveness and defeat. The issue began with a verification concern, she insisted, as if saying the origin story out loud could change the ending. There was an irregularity with your boarding information. Kay tilted her head slightly. The irregularity is that I am black. The cabin was so silent she could hear the ventilation. Someone shifted and gasped at the noise they made as if they'd broken a spell. Weather's mouth opened and closed. That's not. We follow procedures for the safety of the flight. What procedure is it to restrain a minor who handed over valid identification and was seated quietly? Kay asked. Weathers faltered. We've had incidents of smuggling, of trafficking. Kay blinked slow. Me, she said. You mean people who look like me? Alyssa made a small, strangled noise. Weathers shot her a look that would have incinerated a weaker woman. Alyssa didn't shrink. She pressed her lips together and stayed. The phone in the galley rang again. Alyssa went, took the call, then held the receiver out to Weathers like offering a thorn crown. Weathers took it. She listened, and a color rose from her collar into her face. She swallowed twice and said, Yes, Captain. Yes. Understood. She hung up and rubbed her forehead with her thumb. Her voice turned to something close to human. Miss Daly, the captain has asked me to apologize to you on behalf of our crew. He will be filing an incident report. We will ensure a formal apology is made upon landing. She reached into the kit and pulled out a small square of gauze. May I, she asked stiffly, check your wrists? Kay said nothing. She extended her hands, palms up. The marks were pale, then pink, then blooming red around the edges. Weathers dabbed gently with her thumb as if that could undo anything. We'll need to, she began, then stopped. She was trembling a little. The girl had noticed earlier that the crew trembled when their certainty was taken from them. She was seeing it again up close. Weathers' hands were shaking. Alyssa's voice was very soft. Can we get you anything at all? Something to eat? Your pick of meals. Kay looked at her finally. A turkey sandwich, she said. Alyssa blinked, then smiled with the relief of someone handed an actionable item. We have that, she said. Do you want mustard? Yes, Kay said. I'd like to call my mother before we land. Of course, Alyssa said. Well, I'll get you an in-flight call. On us. Or Wi-Fi credit. Kay nodded. She wasn't sure what she would say to her mother. She didn't want to hear the quiet in her mother's voice. It was so much worse than anger. Row 12 had fully entered the moral drama now. We saw it, the boy whispered. Like we all saw it. Shoo, his girlfriend said. This is not your commentary. He subsided. But the story was already moving as stories do. The man across the aisle had texted someone. The someone had told someone else. The someone else had posted. On the ground in Atlanta, a PR assistant had pinged their boss. In Denver, an executive who owed their job to Kay's mother had gone white as printer paper. Somewhere over Kansas, the algorithm inhaled. But the narrative in the cabin did not bend that easily. Weathers stood like a guard beside the paradox that had arrived. The black girl she had cuffed was the one the airline probably feared most of all because she had the power to tell a different story about them. Weathers felt anger twist with something else, humiliation. She had thought she was protecting people. She had not asked who was protecting the girl. We've all witnessed moments when power dynamics suddenly shift. When someone realizes they've misjudged or mistreated someone with influence. But here's the question. Why should it take status or wealth for someone to be treated with basic dignity? If you agree that everyone deserves respect regardless of their status, hit that like button right now. And if you're new here, this is exactly why this channel exists. To expose these moments of injustice and to celebrate those who use their power to create change rather than seek revenge. Subscribe now to join our community of truth tellers and change makers. 40 minutes later, the captain's voice broke in. Folks, this is your captain speaking. We're starting our initial descent into Denver. Weather's a clear 78 degrees and sunny. We should be on the ground in about 25. His voice hesitated, then continued in a register of forced casual. We'd like to remind you that all passengers are to remain seated until we reach the gate. We appreciate your cooperation. It wasn't what he wanted to say. He wanted to say that his crew had messed up. He wanted to say they would do better. But lawyers had already entered the chat. When the wheels bumped the runway, Kay released a breath she hadn't realized she'd split into fragments. As the plane taxied, people turned their phones back on in earnest. The whirs and chimes rose around her, a digital cicada chorus. Kay didn't look at her own. She sat with her hands folded lightly on the blanket as if it were Sunday service and she was waiting for communion. At the gate, before anyone stood, 2 uniformed officers boarded. The cabin tensed. Kay's body coiled without her permission. They moved quickly to the front, too quickly, and faced Kay. The shorter one spoke first, hands visible and open, fingers spread like a supplicant's. "Miss Daly," he said, voice pitched for calm, "we're here on behalf of airport security to ensure your safe deplaning." Weathers closed her eyes. The taller officer cleared his throat. "We will also be taking statements." A murmur rippled. Statements. That word had a way of dividing a room. Those who would offer theirs and those who would suddenly need to catch a connecting flight. Kay stood. Alyssa reached out, a reflex she couldn't suppress, and touched Kay's elbow. The gesture was brief and careful. It said "I'm sorry" in a language older than words. Kay did not pull away. As they exited, a man in row 3 stood abruptly. He was one of those men whose wealth declared itself. Watch heavy as a yoke, shoes polished within an inch of their lives, chin lifted by habit. He blocked the aisle clumsily and then, seeming to realize he would look better if he appeared helpful, stepped aside. He said too loudly, "Good luck. Love your work." Kay glanced at him and did not smile. She stepped into the jet bridge, where the cool tunnel air gathered around her like a curtain. The officers walked in front and behind, a reverse escort to keep gawkers at bay. A woman in airport management navy, blazer, sensible flats, clipboard as a shield, stood at the end. Her badge read as Carmichael. "Miss Daly," Carmichael began and then stopped. The apology on her face was too big to contain. "On behalf of the airport she breathed. "We're sorry." Kay felt something inside her unclench by an inch. "I want my ID," she said. "Of course," Carmichael said, moving as if she could make the world right by sprinting. They brought her to a small room off the concourse. It was the kind of room normally used for detained passengers. Kay recognized it because she'd walked past versions of it in airports around the world and had forced herself to pretend she hadn't noticed the families inside. The irony did not amuse her. She sat. The officers took positions that seemed protective rather than carceral. Alyssa hovered in the doorway until a union rule or a supervisor moved her back. Weathers arrived with Kay's passport card, face pale. She extended it with both hands. "Miss Daly," she said quietly, "I am sorry. I misread the situation. My bias," she swallowed. The words seemed to burn on the way out. "I was wrong." Kay took the card. She studied Weathers as if she might sketch her later. The woman had a groove at the corner of her mouth where sternness had become a habit. Her hands trembled again. "I don't need your apology," Kay said. It wasn't cruel. It was just not the thing she needed. "What I need is for the airline to change the procedure that becomes a net you throw over people who look like me." Weathers nodded. I will push for that." Kay held her gaze. "Will you?" Weathers blinked. "Yes." The word had the shape of a vow. What would you do in Kay's position? Would you accept the apology and move on? Would you demand compensation? Or would you do something entirely different? Comment below with what action you would take. If you're still with me at this point in the video, you're one of the real ones. Type accountability in the comments to let me know you're here for the whole story. Carmichael returned with a phone and a small, fussy device. "We have a private line for you to call your mother," she said. "Or we can set you up in a conference room if you prefer Zoom." "I just need the phone," Kay said. She dialed a number she knew better than any password. The ring sounded twice. Her mother answered on the third ring. "Kenise," she said. The voice was steady and cool, cut from the same cloth as the woman herself. But beneath it, the note Kay feared had threaded itself in, the quiet. "Are you safe?" "I'm safe," Kay said. The word scraped. "I'm in Denver." "I know," her mother said. "They called me. The airline. The airport. The PR teams. Everyone calls when they're afraid." Kay's throat tightened. "I'm sorry." There was silence long enough for 1,000 unsaid things. Then her mother exhaled. "No," she said. "This one isn't on you." Kay closed her eyes. A muscle under her left eye twitched. "They handcuffed me." There was a pause that wasn't silence at all. It was a storm. When her mother spoke, each word was measured, placed, unshakable. "They will never do that to you again." I don't want the machine," Kay said, and now the words came fast, the dam breaking. "I don't want you to burn a thing just to make a point. I don't want to be a point." Her mother was quiet. When she spoke, her voice softened by degrees. "What do you want?" Kay looked at the officers. At Alyssa in the hall, eyes red-rimmed. At Weathers, who stood as if she were holding herself together by intention alone. She thought of the news alerts on the phone. The post being written right now by someone who'd watched part of the scene and would add certainty to their ignorance. I want a conversation, Kay said. And policy changes. And for them to say the words out loud. We restrained a black child because we were primed to see threat instead of a person. She looked at Weathers. Can you say that? Weathers' mouth trembled. We restrained you because I was primed to see threat instead of a person, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Kay nodded once. Thank you. Her mother's exhale came through the line like a benediction. We will ask for the right things, she said. You come to the hotel. Shower. Then we'll meet the regional VP. And we will ask for the right things. I don't want a settlement, Kay said. I know. I want them to fund the training program we're building and to partner with us to roll it out. Not just a one-off. And I want their metrics public. I want them to count. Her mother's voice warmed just a notch. That's my girl. They hung up. Kay put the phone down and stood. I want to give my statement now, she said. And then I want to go. The officers nodded. One clicked his pen, an old-fashioned gesture that calmed Kay by its ordinariness, and pulled out a form. He asked questions carefully. Where were you seated? Who approached you first? What was said? Did anyone else speak? Did you feel threatened? Yes, Kay said to the last one. But not by you. Not now. He nodded. He'd been on the job long enough to know that the past tense can be both a relief and a wound. When they finished, Carmichael re-entered with someone Kay recognized instantly, not because she knew the woman but because she knew the type. Crisp pantsuit, low comfortable heels, hair in a sleek bob. The lower left corner of her blouse had a faint coffee stain, which made Kay like her more. I'm Margaret Sloan, she said, extending a hand. Regional VP. I've been trying to catch up with you since we were notified. Kay shook her hand. We're caught up. Sloan nodded, not flinching. We're going to do a lot of things quickly, she said. We're going to apologize. Publicly. We're going to suspend involved crew until we can understand what happened. At that, Weathers stiffened. Alyssa made a small sound. Kay held up a hand. No. Sloan blinked. No. You're going to pull them from service for the day, Kay said evenly. You'll pay them. And then you'll put them at the front of the training program we're going to build together. They will work on it. They will be the face of it. Not because that fixes anything. Because it's harder than punishment. And because people will listen. This moment right here is why I created this channel. To show not just the injustice but the path forward. If you believe in accountability that leads to real change rather than just punishment, hit subscribe now. We need more voices sharing these stories. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. I want to see how far this story is reaching. Sloan regarded the teenager in front of her and saw suddenly what the covers had been hinting at but not quite capturing. Power not as force but as shape. Shaping the room, the moment, the future into something different than what inertia would produce. Sloan nodded slowly. Okay, she said. Okay. Kay turned to Weathers. You'll do this. Weathers swallowed. She looked suddenly very tired. Yes, she said. And then, with something like humility, if you'll have me. Kay inclined her head. We'll have you. Alyssa choked on a laugh that was really a sob. Weathers glanced at her, and for the first time Alyssa met her eyes and didn't look away. Sloan pulled a chair forward and sat an equal. There's one more thing, she said. She shifted, choosing her words. We got a call from someone at the Daily Group who suggested a specific ask. Metrics, transparency, third-party audits. It was remarkably aligned with what you just said. Her smile twitched. I assume that was your mother. Kay didn't smile back. But a softness entered her face, the kind you learn only after the world has taken a swipe at you and you're still standing. It was. Sloan exhaled. We'll do it. Say it on camera, Kay said. With me. Sloan blinked. Now. Now, Kay said. Before the story decides what it is without us. They filmed it in that very room. It wasn't polished. The light was terrible. A ceiling panel buzzed. But Sloan stood and said the words an airline had never said on record. About bias, about harm, about restraint. She said the airline had cuffed a black child and that it was unacceptable. She said they were partnering with the Daily Foundation on a mandatory national program and that their data would be public. Kay stood beside her. She didn't speak long. She said she was safe. She said she wasn't interested in anyone losing their job. She said she was interested in people keeping them and doing them differently. They posted it. The algorithm inhaled again and this time, it choked on its own appetite. It couldn't quite turn the story into outrage candy. There it was, the harm and the path forward in the same shaky video, delivered by a teenager with a ring of red marks on her wrists and a woman who had just learned how to say, "I was wrong," into a camera. After they offered Kay a private exit, a car to the hotel, a side door. Kay declined the side door but took the car. She stepped back into the concourse and there the world hung, for beats of light, chatter, wheels on tile. Some people glanced and back and said nothing. Some people stared openly, phones midair but not lifted to record. A boy in a baseball cap lifted his hand in a quiet salute. Kay lifted hers back. On the way to the curb, she passed a magazine stand with an old issue featuring her mother on the cover. Hands folded, gaze direct, headline about an investment in HBCUs that had made 6 congressmen nervous. Kay paused. The clerk watched her, not unkindly, as if he might ask her to sign it, then thought better of it. Kay bought a bottle of water and a pack of gum and paid in cash. Outside, the Denver air was thinner, as if you could hear the sky more clearly. The driver held a sign with her initial. He looked at her wrists and then away, pretending not to notice, which struck Kay as its own kind of mercy. "Hotel on 16th Street, Miss Kay?" he asked. "Yes," she said. She sank into the back seat and let herself close her eyes for 2 seconds. When she opened them, the city gleamed new. She thought of the meeting to come. Of the training outline she'd draft on the hotel notepad. Of the text she'd send to her friend group. No, not to tell them what happened, they'd know. To ask who wanted tacos later. To remind herself that the world still contained ordinary joys. The driver merged onto the highway. Kay's phone buzzed. She glanced. A text from an unknown number. "We will do better." It was signed, Weathers. Kay stared at it. Then typed, "Hold yourself to it. We'll be watching." The driver turned the radio up a notch, news on low, just as the anchor's voice caught. A video posted minutes ago by Alpine Air's regional VP and the Daily Foundation's Kenese Daily. "Turn it off," Kay said pleasantly. "Gladly," the driver said, and flipped to a station playing an old Sam Cooke track that her mother loved. For those who haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? This channel is dedicated to stories just like this one. Stories that matter. Stories that change how we see the world. Hit subscribe now and join our community. In the hotel suite, later, the curtains drawn against the afternoon flare, Kay dropped her small bag in the bedroom and looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. The marks were blooming softer now, less angry. She traced them with her eyes and thought of how quickly the world made a story out of your body. She tied her hair up. She ran the water hot, steam fogging the glass. She let her shoulders shake once. Twice. Then she steadied them. Her mother arrived half an hour after the shower, smelling faintly of bergamot and the kind of day that makes headlines. She stepped into the suite and, for a second, dropped the armor. She pulled Kay into her. Kay let herself be small again, just long enough to remember there was a world where she didn't have to put words in the right order for men in suits. "You good?" her mother murmured into her hair. "I will be," Kay said. Her mother leaned back to look at her. "You were brilliant," she said. "You were you." Kay shrugged one shoulder. "I was tired." "That too." Her mother smiled, then a crescent moon. "We meet Sloan in 20. We will ask for the right things. We will get some of them. Later we will go to a taco truck on Colfax, and you will tell me whether teenage boys are as ridiculous as they were in 1999. "They're worse," Kay said. "I suspected." They went downstairs together. In the elevator, a man in a Broncos hoodie kept glancing over, face scrunched like he was trying to place where he'd seen them. Kay slid her hand into her mother's and squeezed once. Her mother squeezed back. In the lobby, a cluster of people waited, not a mob, not a camera gauntlet. Just a collection of faces you see in every American city, tired, hopeful, bored, kind, complicated. Sloan stepped forward, and there were others with her. A black woman from the airline's DI team, a Latino ground supervisor from the ramp, a white union rep with eyes that said she'd been yelling at executives for 2 decades and was good at it. They found a corner. They sat. They began the work. Outside, Denver went about being Denver. Mountains pretending to be closer than they were, the air thinning as the sun dipped. Someone somewhere selling hot dogs, someone parking poorly, fireworks from a minor league game crackling like distant applause. The world was the world. And also, maybe, slightly changed. The meeting lasted 3 hours. They drafted language. They set timelines. They argued about metrics, what to count, how to count it, who would see the numbers. Kay's mother spoke with the precision of someone who had been in rooms like this her whole life. Kay spoke less, but when she did, the room quieted. She had a way of cutting through the corporate speak, of bringing them back to the human core. A black girl in flex ties on a plane. When they finished, Sloan had agreed to more than her legal team would have advised. The airline would fund a comprehensive training program. They would track and publish data on passenger complaints related to racial bias. They would create a passenger bill of rights that explicitly addressed profiling. And they would put Weathers and Alyssa at the center of the effort, not as scapegoats but as voices of change. Kay and her mother walked out into the Denver evening. The air had cooled. The mountains on the horizon looked painted against the sky. "Tacos?" her mother asked. "Tacos," Kay confirmed. They found a truck on Colfax with a line that suggested it was worth the wait. They ordered and sat at a metal table with wobbly legs. Kay's mother watched her daughter eat, the careful way she held the taco, the way her eyes still scanned the street, a habit formed young and never quite broken. "You know," her mother said, "when I was your age I thought the way to change things was to burn them down." Kay looked up. "And now?" Her mother considered. "Now I think it's about building something so good, so necessary, that the old way becomes obsolete." Kay nodded. She understood. It was what they'd been doing with the foundation, creating pathways that made the barriers irrelevant. It was slower. It was harder. But it lasted. "They're going to try to make you a symbol," her mother said. "The media, the activists, even our allies. They'll want to use this story." "I know," Kay said. "You don't have to be that for them." Kay wiped her hands on a napkin. "I won't be a symbol," she said. "But I will use this. On my terms." Her mother smiled, full and real this time. "That's my girl. If you've made it this far in the video, you're witnessing something powerful. Not just accountability but transformation. This is what real change looks like." Hit like if you believe in the power of systemic change, and subscribe if you want more stories that go beyond outrage to show paths forward. 3 weeks later, in a training room at Alpine Air's hub in Dallas, a woman with a tight French twist stood at a whiteboard with a marker in her hand. Her name tag read, "M. Weathers." Her hand trembled for a second and then steadied. She faced a room of flight attendants, young, old, black, white, bored, engaged, skeptical, curious. She said, "Let's talk about the difference between risk and bias." She said, "Let me tell you about a flight to Denver." And in a conference room 2 floors up, a 17-year-old with her hair in a neat ponytail and a bracelet that flashed when she gestured clicked to a slide that read, "Count what matters, change what you can count." She looked around at the executives and the union reps and the lawyers. She said, "We're not here to punish. We're here to prevent. Don't make this about me. Make it about everyone who doesn't have a camera or a famous mother." They listened. Not perfectly. Not completely. But they listened. Later, waiting in a TSA line like everyone else, because she insisted, the agent looked at Kay's ID, then up at her, then back down. He handed it over without changing his expression. "Have a good flight," he said. "You too," Kay said, because she was tired and because it amused her to imagine him getting a flight out of there. And because she had learned to find the sliver of light where it offered itself. On board, she took a window seat. The man beside her didn't introduce himself. He asked if she wanted the armrest. She said yes. He nodded and moved his elbow. The plane backed away from the gate, and the runway unspooled like a promise. As the wheels lifted, Kay closed her eyes and didn't count. She let the sky keep its secrets. She kept hers. And somewhere at 30,000 feet between this place and the next, she allowed herself the dangerous luxury of believing, for a minute, a beat, a breath, that the world could be made again, not with a headline but with 1,000 small bright acts. This story isn't just about one teenager on one flight. It's about all of us, how we see each other, how we respond when we're wronged, and how we can choose to create change rather than just demand justice. If this story moved you, please share it. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that matter. And remember, real change happens not through viral outrage, but through persistent, intentional action.